Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto What If Hub 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was hunted by a deadly assassin who fell in love with him. Part 1. Sakura. Mom, come outside. 10-year-old Sakura ran up to her house and threw open the front door. Come see what I learned today. Her mom turned around with a pained smile. Sakura was way too excited to notice it. Okay sweetie. Just 1 second. Sakura turned and bolted back outside. When her mom came out, Sakura was facing a tree 15 feet away from her with a shuriken in her right hand. Sakura looked over her shoulder and smiled. Mom, are you ready? Her mom crossed her arms and nodded. Sakura put her attention back on the tree and took a deep breath. She took a step forward, pulled her right hand across to her opposite shoulder, and with a flick of her arm the shuriken was sent flying towards the tree. It hit smack dab in the center of the bark. Sakura quickly turned around and started jumping up and down excitedly. Mom, did you see that? Wasn't that amazing? Sakura's face couldn't be happier. Her mom clapped a few times. That was splendid, sweetheart. She was smiling, but it seemed forced. Sakura didn't see the happy approval in her mom's eyes that she thought she had earned. Mom, are you okay? You don't look like you're happy for me. Disappointment started to flow through Sakura. Her mom sighed. Oh Sakura, I don't know how to tell you this. Sakura was confused. Tell me what, Mom? Her mom took a couple steps backward and sat down on the porch steps and patted the spot next to her with her hand. Come sit next to me. Sakura cautiously made her way over to her mother and sat down. Her mom put her arm around her and pulled her close. Sakura, you won't be attending your Team 7 practices anymore. Sakura wasn't sure if she had heard her mother right. What are you talking about? Sakura, we have to move. And by move, I mean move out of this village and even out of the fire country. Sakura's mind started to shut down. Mom, you're just kidding, right? She turned to look at her mother and found the hard truth in her eyes. But why? I was just put on Team 7. Tears started to well up in Sakura's eyes. You can't do this. Sakura abruptly stood up. I refuse to go with you. I am not leaving my home. By the end of her statement, Sakura's tears had become a waterfall. I'm not going. She turned and ran in the opposite direction of her house as fast as her legs could carry her. 13 years later, Sakura sat on the grass by a fire cleaning the blood off of her weapons. Or more specifically, her sword. She always used it on her assassination missions. It made for an easy finish. She was wearing her usual attire. An elbow-length tight, red shirt covered by her gray Junin jacket flat and finished off with her black spandex shorts that stopped at her knees. She never failed to wrap her forearms with white bandages. It became a habit of hers when she first became a genin. Sakura had been made Junin 7 years ago. At 16 years old, she was the youngest Junin assassin the Hidden Mist village has ever had. At 23, her power and ability rivals most other Junin and Anbu members, not to mention she is the top medic nin in her village. She's heard rumors here and there about her being the next Mizukage. She didn't know about that one, but respect was something she didn't have to worry about. Another easy target, Sakura thought. It seems they just keep getting weaker and weaker. After the Mizukage recognized Sakura's ability, she's always been the first one called when an assassination mission came up. To say that Sakura is busy is an understatement. She almost never has time for herself anymore. For the past 5 years, the most time that Sakura has spent in her village during one period is 2 days. The first year of assassinations was the hardest. Sakura would curl up in her tent each night after she killed her target and cry herself to sleep. She's not sure when it happened, but one night the crying stopped. Since that night, Sakura has been able to complete every mission without blinking. She's not even sure when the last time she truly laughed was. Sakura has never had a true friend. She was 10 years old when she moved to the Mist Village. By then, best friends were already chosen. Not to mention that she was born in a rival country. Nobody wanted to associate themselves with a family from the famous Konoha. Her family was treated like outcasts for the first year. The closest to a friend Sakura has ever had was a boy from her old team when she lived in Konoha. She couldn't for the life of her remember his name or what he looked like. She did remember, however, that he was intolerably annoying. The sun was beginning to sink from its high position in the sky. It would be sunset soon. She quickly gathered and packed up all of her stuff. Sakura preferred to travel during sunset. It kept her mind focused on all of the abstract colors in the sky. She wasn't that far from her village. It would only take her 3 hours to reach it with a slow run. Sakura quickly put out the fire, secured her backpack to her back and began heading east toward Mist. When she was 50 feet away from the village gates, she slowed her pace down to a walk. As she passed the guard station, one of the two guards, Tsuchi, said, "Hey, Sakura. You're back earlier than expected." Sakura looked over and smirked. "Aren't I always?" Tsuchi grinned. "Touché. Would you like me to inform the Mizukage?" Sakura shook her head. "I would actually like a little bit of sleep before she decides to give me another mission." Tsuchi nodded and smiled sincerely. "Understood. Good night, Sakura." "Good night, Tsuchi, Akasan," Sakura replied as she set off to her apartment. Sakura walked at a slow pace towards her apartment. She still lived with her parents. She wasn't home enough to have her own apartment. Besides, she enjoyed coming home to her loving parents, her cozy bed, and her mom's fantastic cooking. It was definitely something to look forward to. Before she reached the front door, it was swung open to reveal her parents with huge smiles on their faces. "Welcome home, sweetie," they both exclaimed. Her mom practically tackled her while her dad came around and put his arms around Sakura and his wife. This is the best part of coming home, Sakura smiled to herself. Her parents had never failed in giving her a small, welcome home, celebration. Her parents were the reason that she could handle being an assassin. Even after Sakura's emotions had been locked away, they always knew how to release them, even if it was just for a day or two. Her mom grabbed her hand and started pulling her inside. "Come on, Sakura. Dinner is almost ready." Now that she mentioned it, Sakura did smell something wonderful coming from the kitchen. "How was your mission, Sakura?" her dad casually asked. "Ya know, Dad. They just keep getting easier to kill. They're not even a challenge anymore." Sakura shrugged. "Sweetie, I think you're just getting that much stronger." Sakura looked up at her dad as he winked. "Sakura, you know you're the strongest ninja of your age and many more." "Yes, Dad. You know I don't like to talk about it." "You don't have to be modest all of the time, Sakura. You can always brag to your very proud parents." Her dad smiled. "And proud we are. Dinner is ready." Sakura's mom poked her head out of the doorway. As her family sat down, Sakura had to stop herself from immediately stuffing food down her throat. She was starving. When she's on missions, she only eats enough to keep herself strong enough to fight. Being impatient, Sakura reached out to take her parents' hands and quickly said grace. "I can see our daughter is hungry, Ayumi." "Good. Maybe that means we won't have any leftovers," Sakura's mom giggled. "Ah, but leftovers are always good for breakfast," Sakura pointed out. Sakura's mom looked at her and smiled gently. "I love having you back. You're not the only one," her dad added as he patted Sakura on the shoulder. "So, what was your latest target like? Who was he a threat to anyway?" Ayumi coughed. "Hiroshi." Sakura looked down at her plate. "Dad, I'd rather not talk about it." "Oh, right. Sorry, sweetheart." Her dad coughed awkwardly. "Shiro has gotten a lot stronger. He passed the Chunin exam last week. I'm sure he'd be ecstatic to tell you about it." Sakura's head snapped up at the mention of Shiro. "Really? Did y'all watch it?" she asked curiously. Her mom spoke up. "Oh yes. He had no problem defeating his opponent in the final match." Sakura smiled. "Shiro is growing up." Shiro was more or less Sakura's adopted brother. He's never really had any friends due to a rumor that his father killed one of the village's elders when he was 5 years old. The accusation was never proven true, but nobody went to the trouble to prove it wrong, either. His father was forced out of the village and Shiro has never seen him since. Sakura had found him one day swinging alone. She had basically adopted him. His mother had gone into a depression and began isolating herself. For a few months, Sakura's parents had even let him stay in their house while his mother recovered. That was 10 years ago. Ever since then they've had an unbreakable bond. Oh, I almost forgot to mention. Lady May is currently the sensei of a genin team. Her mother added. Sakura's eyes widened. No way. I thought she said that she would never be a sensei of a genin team. She said it would defy her age. She playfully rolled her eyes. Her father shrugged. I have no idea where the change of mind came from. Sakura's face brightened. I can't wait to ask her about it. Sakura, honey, don't you want to keep your job as an assassin? Sakura giggled. I was just kidding, Mom. I'm smarter than that. She sighed and stood up. I think I'm gonna go ahead and go to bed. I feel like I'm going to just fall over at any moment. Her mom walked over and took Sakura's dinner plate from her hands. Well, you go ahead. Don't worry about the dishes tonight, sweetie. You deserve your rest. Ayumi leaned over and kissed her daughter's cheek. Good night, Sakura. Her dad stood up and patted her back. We won't wake you in the morning. Sakura smiled at her father. Thanks, Dad, but don't be surprised if I'm already gone by the time y'all wake up. I have a feeling the Mizukage already knows I'm back. Her father chuckled. I wouldn't be at all surprised. Good night, Mom, Dad. I love you. Sakura shouted as she climbed the stairs to her room. We love you too. Her mom shouted back. Hiroshi walked over and put an arm around his wife. I don't think that there's a better daughter out there. We are the best parents ever, of course. Ayumi and her husband made eye contact and burst into laughter. The second Sakura walked through her bedroom door, she began peeling off her clothes. By the time she made it to her bathroom, she was completely. She turned on the shower and looked at her reflection as she waited for the shower to heat up. She really needed some time off from these missions. They have really taken a toll on her complexion. These dark circles will never go away. Sakura turned away from the mirror and stepped into the shower. She let the hot water run over every inch of her body. She couldn't remember the last time a shower felt this good. It began to slowly relax her muscles. What she needed was a nice trip to the hot springs and a long massage afterward. She spent another 2 minutes in the shower before getting out and drying herself off. When she walked back into her room, she threw on a t-shirt, a pair of panties, and climbed into bed. The second her head hit the pillow, Sakura was gone. When Sakura opened her eyes the next morning, she looked over at her clock. 12 p.m. She threw off the covers and jumped out of bed. Sakura froze. There was another presence in her room. She whipped around and found Chojuro staring at her with wide eyes. Sakura glared and pointed at him. You. How long have you been here? Chojuro began stuttering. Since 7 o'clock. Sakura fumed. Since 7? What have you been doing? Just standing there like an idiot. She began running around her room finding a decent outfit to wear. When she found something appropriate, she ran into her bathroom and slammed her door. 10 seconds later, she stormed out of the bathroom and stomped up to Chojuro and grabbed the neck of his shirt. Why are you here? Chojuro coughed and tried to steady his voice. Lady May has summoned you. Sakura narrowed her eyes. If I get in trouble for being late, your hope of having a family will be extinguished. Ya hear me? She flicked her wrist and Chojuro went flying into her wall. Truth be told, Chojuro was terrified of her. He hadn't wanted to wake her up because he didn't want to end up in this situation. Ironic. Sakura was out of her window and running toward the Mizukage Tower in 2 seconds. Poor Chojuro, she thought, I really should treat him better. She shrugged it off and pushed her legs faster. When she reached the doors, she kept her pace and barged through. She kept running through the building until she reached the Mizukage's office door. Sakura took a deep breath and knocked 3 times. Come in, Sakura. Sakura opened the door and walked a couple steps until she was standing a few feet away from the Mizukage's desk. She made a small bow in show of respect. If you don't mind me asking, how did you know it was me, my lady? Mei smiled. Oh Sakura, I've known your chakra signature for quite a while now. I just decided to test my knowledge. And it seems I was right. The Mizukage cleared her throat. But we have no time to waste with small talk. You are already behind. Why are you late? And I trust you completely your last mission. I am most sorry. Chojuro decided to stand in my room for 5 hours and watch me sleep. And yes, my lady. Mission successful. Sakura rolled her eyes. Mei nodded. He's scared of you, ya know. He was probably fighting himself on whether or not he should wake you. Anyways, stop distracting me. I know you're probably exhausted from all of the back-to-back missions, but I have just received one that I trust only you to complete. I understand. Your new target is a ninja from the Hidden Leaf Village. You will meet him in the Hidden Frost Village to partner with him in assassinating a different target. He has the information on this target. After the both of you succeed in eliminating him or her, you are to assassinate the Leaf Ninja. And you'll need a code name. I trust you to choose one that's appropriate. Sakura nodded. Why is this target a threat? He is the Leaf's Jinchuriki and rumored to be the next Hokage. He is one of the strongest shinobi in this world. Plus, the Mist and Leaf aren't getting along too well right now, and it's best to keep the power equal. When do I leave? You should have left 4 hours ago. Thank you, Lady Mei. Sakura bowed and was out the door before Mei could blink. She smiled. I think she's my favorite shinobi. Sakura reached her home in record time. She searched around her room for her weapons pouch and sword. Once she found it, she attached the pouch to her waist and tachi to her back and began searching for her essentials. She packed a few pairs of panties, an extra bra, a t-shirt to sleep in, and her few necessary toiletries. She'll have to wash her current outfit every night. Once she was sure she had everything she needed, she exited through her window and jumped down to the street. She turned around and took a long look at her home. Sakura had a funny feeling that she wouldn't be seeing it for a while. Bye Mom. Bye Dad. Sakura grinned. Without a second glance, she began walking towards the gates. Leaving already, Sakura? Akasan asked. Sakura shrugged. Are you really surprised? Akasan and Tsuchi both chuckled. No, not at all, Akasan replied. Sakura continued walking through the gates. Without turning around, she waved. I'll see y'all in a few days. Keep the village safe for me. Naruto. 2 days later. Swinging the kunai in his hand, he flipped it back and forth staring out into the horizon. The sun's light was just beginning to peek out of the mountains and illuminate the whole valley. The woods here were never silent. There was always noise, whether it was birds or the sound of the wind pushing the trees around. He could faintly hear the rushing of a river nearby. With his left hand he ran his fingers through his blonde hair, nervously. It would be a heavenly place if it weren't stuck in the middle of hell. Shaking his head side to side, Naruto took a deep breath. He turned back towards the forest where a man awaited him. He gazed at the outline of a body lying awkwardly on the ground. The man was bound by his hands and feet. Normal rope would have held him, but Naruto decided to use chakra binds. The man was currently unconscious. His slow and deliberate breathing showed it. Any minute now, he thought hastily. He continued rotating the weapon around his finger, watching the metal swing with great concentration. Naruto shifted his weight into his left foot. Then the right, and back to left again. He coughed, getting rather impatient. However, the faster rising and falling of the man's chest told Naruto he was about to awaken. Twirling the weapon through his fingers once more, Naruto leaned against a nearby tree and waited. The man on the ground groaned and rolled over onto his back. While the man struggled to regain his surroundings, Naruto took this time to marvel his handiwork. His flesh was flawless, no bruises. In fact, it was quite easy to capture him. The man did, however, have a long cut across his cheek. It had happened when Naruto thought the man could have easily dodged it, but was proven wrong. This man was a rogue Junin of the sound, for Christ's sake. The man opened his eyes slowly. They widened a fraction of an inch. At first, he looked around calmly. Then he tried to jump to his feet, only to fail and land on his knees. As if hearing the metal of Naruto's twirling kunai scrape past his fingers, the man turned ever so slowly to face him. His eyes widened once they came in contact with Naruto's bright blue ones. "Why you?" he stammered, shrinking back at the sight of the blonde Junin. Naruto merely raised an eyebrow at the man. Truth be told, he didn't enjoy these missions, but then again, this is what an assassin does. As a kid he was always so hyperactive. He still is. But, with age comes maturity. As soon as he takes the scroll with the name of the target, he is no longer the Naruto Uzumaki everyone knows. He stopped twirling the kunai. The handle of the metal twisted so it was back into his palm as he wrapped his fingers around it. His eyes hardening, dramatically. The man, sensing his death, shrank back even further from Naruto. He gave the man a sly smile. Crouching slightly, he brought the weapon up to arm level. Unknown to the man on the ground, the real Naruto was already behind him. He used his legendary technique, a shadow clone. It surprised him that the man did not realize the fake. Must be of his lack of continuous training, his mind offered. Shrugging his shoulders back, Naruto pulled the blade up. The bound man's eyes stayed glued to the fake Naruto in front of him. Naruto approached from behind and quickly ran the blade of his kunai across his prisoner's throat. Never knowing of the danger, the man slumped forward, dead. It was better that way. He didn't believe in cold murder. No one deserved that kind of treatment. Naruto glanced at the clone that exploded into a mass of smoke. Wiping his brow, he dropped the bloodied metal beside the man's lifeless body and untied his hands and feet. Appeared suicide, no questions asked. He stared at the body a little while longer. Just another name. Just another body to eliminate. Who knows what this man's life had in store for him? Naruto tried not to linger on those thoughts. It was for his village that he swore a duty to protect. And he would, even at the cost of his sanity. He felt his old smile return to his lips as he turned to walk away from the scene. It was a good 40-mile run back to the Leaf Village. Maybe sooner, if he sprinted. He pushed his legs upward and landed softly on a branch that was hanging over his head. He was in no rush, so he decided a slow run would suffice. Jumping from branch to branch, he allowed his thoughts to wander. 2 years ago, he received his army green Junin vest and the responsibilities that came with it. The position was just another building block towards becoming Hokage, and he was glad to accept it. Heck, maybe one day he'll have his own team of genin. A light laugh escaped his mouth at the thought of it. He could hardly remember his teammates. The girl, whose name he couldn't remember for the life of him, moved or something, so he never got close to her. Sasuke left to join Orochimaru in search of power to destroy his older brother. In this life, Naruto was always alone, but his friends and fellow teammates made it worth it. Running out of thick trees to use to propel him forward, he jumped onto the ground and continued his jogging back home. He hoped that maybe, just maybe, he could keep others from the pain he has suffered. Being branded a monster at birth wasn't a nice ordeal. But then again, some sacrifices for others' happiness was kinda worth it. An uneasy feeling crept over him. I'm not alone. Out of his peripheral vision he noticed a kunai speeding towards him. He didn't think, just acted. Muttering a few words and hand signs, he jumped into the air just as a clone took his previous position. Landing quietly on a tree branch above, he watched the clone block the weapon with a kunai of his own, while the real Naruto searched for the owner of the weapon. His defenses were up, adrenaline pounding through his veins, his heartbeat could be heard from his ears. The kunai had come pretty close to his head. But he relaxed and rolled his eyes when he saw a teenager approach the clone. Almost got you there, huh, Naruto? Konohamaru exclaimed. He watched his clone scoff and reply, hardly. There's not a scratch on me. His clone smiled, looking all over his body. Well, you just wait. You won't be so lucky next time. He yelled, pointing a finger at the clone, then hurrying off into a different direction out of sight. Sighing, he smacked his head. God, Naruto, that was close. Pay more attention. Naruto jumped down from the tree and approached his clone, who had his arms behind his head looking completely relaxed. His aiming skills have gotten better. The clone remarked. Yay, yay, Naruto said as the clone dispersed into the air. Naruto walked the rest of the way. The village gates were not far ahead. The giant doors were propped open as he passed by the guardhouse. Back already, Naruto? The guard asked, looking completely bored out of his mind. Yay. Nothing I can't handle, he told the guard, smiling. By the way, the guard called out when Naruto kept walking inward into the village. The Hokage wanted to speak with you once you returned. It seemed urgent. That old hag? He asked with complete innocence. Jesus, Naruto, you're the only one who can get away with calling her names. He remarked. Guess that means I have to hurry. Huh, Naruto yelled back, as he passed the guard station and continued inwards to village. I would recommend it, he said as his voice faded out as Naruto began to run towards the tower. But instead of a left to the Hokage tower, he took a right. He approached a wide building with the title, Konoha Intelligence Headquarters. He pushed open the door and entered a plain reception room. Walking to the edge of the counter, he rang the bell 3 times. When he saw someone start to approach the desk, he continued ringing the bell. God, would you cut that out, you idiot? Ino said, coming to meet him. I could, but I'm not, Naruto said, smiling, ringing the bell again. Can I help you? Or are you here just to bother all of us again? She rolled her eyes. Well, I'm actually here to see Shikamaru. If you could tell him to get his lazy in here. He smiled. That would be great. He half expected her to turn around and go get him. But the other half was proven right when she screamed his name at the top of her lungs. Nothing. Naruto's eyebrow rose. Ino shook her head and then bellowed his name once more. A stumbling figure emerged. What? Naruto is here to see you. She added at a more inside voice, before disappearing further into the building. Troublesome woman, Shikamaru muttered under his breath. Yes, Naruto? He asked, scratching the back of his head. Taking a nap already? It's only 8 in the morning. Naruto shook his head disapprovingly. Actually it's 9, Shikamaru corrected. Naruto grin disappeared as he got more serious. The favor you asked for me. He started and Shikamaru leaned in the hear better. I checked the man. No reports, no scrolls. He was clean. Looks like more faulty intel, Shikamaru. Shikamaru sighed, tiredly. Great. He muttered sarcastically. I'll have to start back from square one. Naruto nodded and rolled his eyes, remembering Tsunade wanted to see him. Look, I have to go. Is there anything else you need me to do? Naruto asked as he began to walk backwards away from the counter. Shikamaru shook his head. No, but thanks. No problem, Naruto called out as he exited the door. But once again, he avoided his real destination as he made his way to his home. He just needed to pick up a few things. After all, he was gone for 3 days. And God knows what that old hag is going to have him do. He made it to his house in pretty remarkable time. Unlocking the door, he made his way in. He needed to restock his arsenal. Naruto lost 2 good kunai from his last mission. Pulling open a drawer by his front door, he pulled out 2 metal kunai and put them in his pouch. Naruto clipped the flap back in place and glanced over at his glass cabinet where various priceless weapons were on display. Noticing his katana, he pulled open the glass and wrapped his fingers around it. He pulled it up to eye level. The metal made a sharp scrape sound as he unsheathed it. I guess I'll carry you, he said to himself, as he slid the metal back in. He had gotten this weird feeling he would need it. He strapped it to his back and walked back over to the front door. Looking around once more for anything else, he stopped. Weather is supposed to drop tonight. He'll need a jacket. Naruto didn't have to look far. A black cloak with orange flames rising from the bottom laid over a chair in the corner. Slowly he picked up the material. It was his father's, one of the few items that he left him. Naruto slipped into the material and glanced at the mirror. His eyes widened as he turned to stare at the reflection that looked back at him. It had been months since he last took a glance at his appearance. He wore a black undershirt with long sleeves and black pants that stopped at his ankles. White tape was strapped around one of his thighs, holding a kunai. Over the black was his green Junin vest. His cloak only added to the appearance of a man he would never forget. He looked just like his father. The only difference was his shorter hair. A dull pain picked at the edges of his defenses. He tore his eyes from the reflection. And without a second thought he exited his house. He changed his course for the Hokage Tower and walked at faster than normal speed. He heard random people call out his name, but for once, he didn't return the greeting. Granny Tsunade's request to see him made him curious. Why was it so sudden? Entering the tower, he quickly scaled the stairs and stopped at her office where a Chunin stood guard. Naruto Uzumaki? He asked. The one and only. She has been expecting you. He nodded and opened the door. Naruto walked in and casually stood standing up facing the Hokage's desk, his arms crossed. Granny, he said, his eyes looking down at the ground. She turned around in her chair and faced him, her fingers lacing together as her chin rested on them. Her eyes widened a fraction of an inch looking at him. You're late, again, she remarked. He smiled, his lips pulling back into a wide grin. What did you expect? Maybe you would mature a little. And show up when your Hokage asks you to. She reasoned, raising her eyebrows. I am mature, he defended. How was your mission? She asked, leaning back in her chair. Surprisingly easy. More so than normal, he stated. Suska Hagane eliminated. Good, she replied and leaned forward, putting her elbows on the desk. It was silent for a few more seconds before she continued to speak. I have another mission for you, she stated, simply. Already, he couldn't bite back the response. He knew in the back of his mind it would be another mission. But he had really hoped the feeling was wrong. Yes, S-ranked mission, she told him. Assassination, she nodded, but didn't move for a file containing the target's information like usual. Instead, she just stared at him. All I have for you is a name, Tsunade said. Great, he muttered sarcastically. You may remember her, she started, but Naruto cut her off. Her? He asked. He wasn't. It just surprised him a female could be S-ranked. There were not many girls that strong anymore. But Tsunade continued on, she used to be part of your genin team. But she and her family left the village long ago. She stood up approaching him. What is the reason for the assassination? He asked, curiosity getting the best of him. Tsunade looked hesitant but complied. As an ex-ninja of the Hidden Leaf, she poses a threat. We don't know how much she knows. Naruto spoke before she could finish. Why now? It's been close to 10 years since I was on my genin team. She glared at him. If you would let me finish, you would know. Sorry, he remarked, smiling. Not sorry at all. I've heard reports that she has gotten stronger. Close to rivaling me in medical ninjutsu. She said, not saying anything further. She was hiding something. But he didn't question what it was. A ninja from the Hidden Mist will be assisting you. Hidden Mist? Is this a move for an alliance? Naruto asked, surprise across his features. I don't know, but be on your guard. They offered it. I couldn't say no, it would be like a war distrusting them or something. She smiled slightly. He rolled his eyes at the thought of working with a Hidden Mist ninja. You will have to make up a code name. I don't trust them enough for them to know who you really are. She stated. Code name, he confirmed, thinking of all the different possibilities of names. Yes, Naruto, I'm sure you will have a lot of fun with that, but make sure it sounds real. She almost begged and Naruto laughed. Destination. You will meet up with the Mist Nin in Frost Country. From there you will explain the mission. She said. Attire. What you're wearing. It will be easier for the Mist Ninja to know. She pointed to his army green vest, then sighed. I do have a certain piece of information that may or may not be helpful. She did have a nervous tick. She would chew on the inside of her mouth when she got jumpy or scared. She made it pretty obvious too. Naruto nodded. I'm sorry, you don't have time to change. She is a high-class threat, and this information is already days late. Not to mention you took your sweet time getting here. You leave now, she commanded with a flick of her wrist. Wait, the name? He asked. Oh, yes, of course. She said, muttering something about old age. Her name is Sakura Haruno. Now go. Yes, ma'am, he confirmed and formed hand signs and disappeared out of the room. Tsunade turned and faced the window, her hands clasped behind her back. Be careful, Naruto, this girl is stronger than you realize. Naruto. The sun was already sliding back behind the mountain. He grunted, increasing his pace towards the Fire Country border. His plan was to stop at the border and set up camp. Being on the fire border meant less attacks in the middle of the night. Not that he couldn't handle it or anything, but he was really tired from transitioning from mission to mission and didn't feel like dealing with a surprise attack. He knew his guard could drop for the slightest second, and even that was enough for someone to ambush him. From the border he would continue into Hot Springs Country before finally ending in Frost Country, where he would meet his counterpart. Which he was not looking forward to at all. All Mist Nin seemed to be overly. The trees had started to get thinner with each step he took. With the light almost gone, it was getting harder to see. He moaned at the thought that the Hokage was right, that being late to receive the mission would put him back hours. He increased his pace even more to compensate for his actions. Almost there, he told himself out loud. It was silly to talk to himself. But it was the only thing that seemed to keep him sane on these solo missions. When the border was within eye distance, he slowed down before finally stopping on a tree branch. Naruto dropped down to his feet and scanned the area. His eyes wandered around the trees around him. It was empty, as far as he could tell. The place looked as though no one had passed here before. His lips pulled back into a weak smile, he glad it was deserted. Deciding this was the best place to sleep, he removed 5 kunai from his back pouch. He placed them on the ground in a row and tied a piece of paper around the hilt of each one. Once finished, he made a few quick hand signs. An inky, black seal formed on the tied piece of paper. Leaning over, Naruto rolled all the weapons into one of his hands. Locating 5 different trees that surrounded him, he threw the metal towards the trunks. After they all hit their mark, Naruto lowered his arm back to his side. Finally deciding to live up to the legacy of his last name, he learned of a different type of paper bomb. The paper bomb would go off if any one person with a high chakra level passed by. Therefore, he would be alerted of someone's presence. But the bombs wouldn't activate if animals passed through because it wouldn't pick up the small force of chakra. Of course, this technique had some loopholes, but it was the best he had. He could always stay awake all night. But he didn't trust himself to not fall asleep. Sighing, realizing he wouldn't have a good meal due to his hope of staying unnoticed and a fire would attract attention, he popped some ration pills and took his cloak off. Slowly he reached around to untie his forehead protector and set it on the ground next to him as he sat down against a tree. The bark cut into his back and was not in the least bit comfortable. He really hoped this would be the last of the series of missions. Naruto rested the cloak in his lap and thought of the task he would have to complete tomorrow. Since he had a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time, he decided he would wake up earlier. He then would have to meet the Mist Nin and search for Sakura. The only problem was he didn't have a clue where to start. All he had was a name and something to look out for. Why couldn't this be easier? His brain whined. There's that other thing, he thought. He would no longer be Uzumaki Naruto. Tomorrow he would be just Minato. He smiled slightly at the choice of his code name. It would be weird being called by his father's name, but he couldn't think of a better one. The name would leave no room for questions. His father was dead and no one knew the 4th Hokage had a son. He leaned back into the sharp bark of the tree as his eyes slowly drooped closed. With his mind full of questions and possibilities, he drifted off to sleep. A light was shining straight into his eyelids, so he squeezed them shut. But the action neither took the light away nor made it any more bearable. Why did he leave the curtains open? Shaking his head side to side, Naruto opened his eyes only to be blinded by a brilliant light. He groaned and rolled over onto his side, wondering why it was so bright. His eyes flew open as he searched for the source of light. It was sunlight. He glanced around. Trees. Where the heck am I? His memory began to flood back into his brain like a broken dam. His mind raced as he remembered where he was. Shit. He cursed, noticing the sun was almost high in the sky. You got to be kidding me. I slept in. He roared, tying his forehead protector around his head. He shoved his arms back into his cloak and brought his 2 fingers up to his mouth. Release. He shouted as the spellbound bombs popped, turning back into normal kunai. Running around, he tore the metal out from the trees. Shoving them back into his pouch, he took off across the border. He pushed his body even faster than the night before. He mentally kicked himself for losing a few good hours. Now he'll be lucky if he makes it by sundown. The extra sleep did indeed help his awareness, however. Naruto became even more cautious of his surroundings once the border was far behind him. He was no longer safe inside this country. Rogues were a threat and other countries didn't take too kindly to foreigners. He just hoped he'd make it across the border without running into problems. Naruto watched the road under him from the trees. It was a little merchant road, highly used by civilian travelers. He would see a civilian walking the road every now and then. He diverted his course from the road. The road led to the capital and Naruto was going in the almost opposite direction. It was sad to say he left the road with disappointment. Traveling was so boring to him. His mind would wander all over the place and seeing trees over and over again got annoying. Once, he had gotten so bored he counted every tree he saw, but stopped after 2000 before he completely lost his sanity. The temperature was starting to drop and he thanked his subconscious for telling him to take his cloak. A chill ran up his back, but it wasn't from the cold. He tried to ignore it. He almost always felt it when he left the country. It just bothered him. He couldn't exactly place the uneasy feeling. Pushing off of a tree branch, he again hoped this would be the last mission for a while. Naruto wanted a break from all of the killing. But he knew it wasn't just the killing. It was doing it alone, holding his burden in silence. For that reason he was glad a mist ninja was coming with him. But he hated the idea of someone else experiencing what happened to him on an almost daily basis. He was just beginning to think about his counterpart he would meet when he realized he was being followed. His uneasy feeling was finally confirmed. Naruto kept his current speed. He glanced to the side trying to get a read on the chakra figures following at a distance behind him. His eyes widened a fraction of an inch. 4 signatures. 4 were following him. Concentrating harder, he noticed 3 of which were considerably lower than the 4th. A genin team, his mind offered. Whichever, he just knew he couldn't avoid confrontation. Making hand signs he muttered, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. He jumped to the side as his shadow clone continued to jump from tree to tree. He focused his chakra on the clone and masked his own as he waited for the 4 followers. Just as predicted, he saw a young kid jump by first, then an older man, followed by 2 other kids. His instinctive skills kicking in, he checked their appearances. Naruto stared at their forehead protectors. Rock ninja, he muttered as he watched them go. Why would they be so far away from their village? His mind questioned. In order to figure out what to do next, he would have to know what he was up against. To judge the group's strength, he looked at the appearance of each one. The leading boy had brown hair and was obviously the troublemaker of the team. His stance was powerful and straightforward. The genin made no effort to hide his footfalls. The kid reminded Naruto of his self back in his younger years. Behind was the girl. She had a determined look upon her face as she followed the boy. Between her fingers were 3 shuriken. Naruto ruled her out as a main concern in the group. Having her weapon already drawn meant that she was insecure of her surroundings and lacked confidence, which was fatal in any fight. Next to her was the final genin. He wore glasses with red hair. His facial features were grim as he constantly glanced around at his surroundings. He gave Naruto the impression he was the brains of the team, but seemed to be overcautious. Naruto checked the whole genin team off as harmless. His eyes moved over to stop at the adult of the team. The Junin of the group had his eyebrows pulled tight together in concentration. The way his eyebrows twitched, Naruto imaged the man thinking of a plan of action against the leaf nin they were tailing. He had sideburns and appeared to be young for a Junin. He must have been assigned his team just recently. What really stuck out was a sword strapped to his back. It was huge. He marked him as a potential threat if it came to a fight. He rolled his eyes and tailed them, trying to pick up on their conversation. Naruto kept his chakra signature low and stayed at a distance, keeping just within hearing distance. Sensei, let's get him already. He hasn't even noticed us. The lead ninja yelled excitedly. Shut up, you idiot. He'll hear us, the female of the genin team remarked. Quiet, both of you. The sensei barked, silencing the two from bickering further. The boy, who hadn't said a word, spoke up. Why do you think a leaf shinobi is so far from his village? The sensei shook his head. I have no idea. Naruto, sensing the group meant no real harm, had his clone slow down. If it did come to a fight, these genin seemed new to the whole idea of a team and it would be easy to fight them off. However, he would do everything in his power to keep it from getting to that. His clone came to a stop and drew his kunai as if surprised by the group following. The team of rock ninjas slid to a stop and drew their weapons as well. It was quiet as the sides stared at one another. Why are you tailing me? His clone called out. What is your purpose in the land of hot springs? The older man yelled. I could ask you the same. His clone pointed out. We are returning from a mission. Your course is towards Lightning Country. I think we have a right to know. He argued. Naruto's double just stared at the group with narrowed eyes. He couldn't give away any part of his mission. Especially to Rock Nin. What was left of his hope of just walking away started to take a dive for the worst. The leaf and rock don't see eye to eye and he was too suspicious looking. You will tell us. The loudmouth boy from earlier yelled, charging at his clone. With angry shouts from his team, the boy continued to charge toward Naruto's clone, his kunai raised. He wouldn't be allowed any further, Naruto realized. This team wouldn't let him. But he didn't want any bloodshed over a misunderstanding. He would have to cause a diversion, with minimal damage to the genin. Naruto's clone threw his kunai at the boy to stop his advance, but the weapon was blocked when the girl jumped up to back her teammate. They had this determined look in their eyes. This team reminded him so much of his younger years. Although blurry, the memory was still there. Would you calm down? He heard his clone try to reason with the genin. I'm not trying to hurt you. The genin continued their assault on the clone anyway, ignoring him. He watched as the silent boy from earlier made hand signs, forming two of him, both throwing kunai that his clone blocked. The girl and the other boy, on the other hand, were performing close combat. Every hit his clone tried to make on one of the kids were always blocked by the other genin just in time. Always protecting one another. The Junin, however, was nowhere in sight. He wasn't fighting with his students, nor was he standing anywhere within eyesight. Shit. His mind raced. Have I been compromised? He tore his concentration away from his clone to look around wildly around him. But only trees surrounded him. Hearing a loud shout, Naruto turned back to look at his clone. He relaxed slightly, when he noticed the leader was behind a tree trying to flank the clone. He was drawing his sword, his expression serious. He'll attack while Naruto is distracted, Naruto predicted. Naruto needed the genin out of the picture. His clone might get hurt then while defending the attack of the Junin. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto had the clone throw a kunai, pinning the silent boy into a tree nearby. With a kick, Naruto's clone slammed the loudmouth boy back into the girl and they went flying into the air. The genin were now all a great deal away from their sensei. The girl was slammed into a tree, completely by accident however. He watched the sensei of the team leap into the air using a lightning technique he didn't understand. With his sword drawn, the sensei placed his hands on the blade that conducted the technique like live wire. Electricity sparked and flowed throughout the blade. Within seconds he was in front of Naruto's double. "No one harms my students," he shouted, shoving the blade deep within the clone. The real Naruto watched his clone double over as a current of electricity conducted into his clone's body. The clone fell to his knees, blood spraying out of his mouth. The sensei pulled the blade out with a smirk. Naruto knew these types of clones would pop when enough damage was taken. He would have to make it look planned. He pulled out a kunai just as the clone fell over, exploding into a white cloud. "What the?" The leader started, whirling around looking for the real Naruto. Naruto threw the metal at the Junin. He brought his blade up to block the weapon as the fake attempt to kill him bounced off onto the ground. Naruto formed more hand signs, forming another clone to take off running in the opposite direction he was heading. "There he goes, sensei," one of the genin called out, pushing himself off the ground and giving chase to the fleeing clone. "Get back here, you coward," the loudmouth boy bellowed, sprinting after the fake Naruto. Naruto sighed, watching them go. He was seriously beginning to doubt he was going to get across the border without another problem. Checking his surroundings once more, he continued his journey. The clone would pop before he gets too far from the original owner. Lucky for him, he would be long gone before the rock nin realized they had been doped. He didn't need a sign to tell him that he was entering Frost Country. Without a second glance, he left Hot Springs Country far behind. The temperature dropped dramatically. He momentarily wondered if he jumped back and forth behind the borders, whether it would be hot then cold. It was eerie how the temperature changed. Ice clung to branches of the trees, and the further he went, the more ice and snow he saw. He smiled upon realizing where he was. He wouldn't have to travel any longer. The main village was close to the border. He jumped out of the trees as he approached Shimogakure. Although this village had no cage, it still was a ninja village. He was still on guard and wary of others. Snow covered the village like a blanket. His feet made a crunching noise as he entered the barren land. There were no people out and about. The icy wind blew his hair across his face as he gazed around at the unpopulated village. It was beautiful. Houses and shops stood up from out of the ground, snow on their roofs. It almost looked deserted except for a lone figure standing on top of a large concrete structure. "Leave it to a leaf shinobi to be late," the figure said, turning to face him. His heart dropped when he saw the waves engraved upon the metal on her forehead. His counterpart was a female. She was obviously strong. The chakra she was emitting was almost overwhelming, even with her covering most of it up. No matter, he could take her on. He smiled widely at the thought of beating a mist nin. For it being so cold out here, she wore less layers of clothing than he did. Her arms were wrapped in white tape and stopped when the fabric met her red undershirt. Like him, she had her gray Junin jacket over her undershirt. His eyes traveled to her face. Her pink hair blew as the frosty wind like a fire. The next thing he noticed were her eyes. They were like green emeralds. Staring at them too long made him feel like he was trapped in some weird genjutsu, only he knew he wasn't. A shiver ran up his back. But not from the cold. He found something in her eyes that frightened him. They were hard and piercing, like nothing could break her barrier. Someone once told him eyes were like the window to your soul. And if that statement was true, this mist nin has done things or been through something to make her like this. It was because of that philosophy he suddenly feared her. Her arms were crossed as she gave him a pointed look, probably waiting for him to say something. But at this moment he was speechless. He couldn't explain why he was acting this way. There was something about this ninja from the mist that utterly terrified him, but yet at the same time made him feel like he would no longer be sharing his burden ever again. Almost like she was just like him, doing missions that slowly broke her apart into an empty shell. But then again, it was just a feeling. It was probably his brain acting up from all the schooling that pervert of a sage taught him. He pushed his inner thoughts to the back of his mind. He was on a mission. He would not let the real Naruto show. He was Minato now. Turning his attention back to the mist shinobi, he began to judge her strength. Hello, are you the leaf ninja I'm working with? She asked plainly. He pulled his lips back in a straight line, staring up at her. Well, it doesn't look like any other leaf ninja are here, does it? I thought you had figured that part out for yourself. Naruto remarked, smirking at her. When he looked hard enough, he swore he saw her eyes narrow. The wind picked up again, fluttering his black and orange cloak like a flag in the wind. His blondish hair swayed to the side from the force of the air pushing past him. The mist nin's hair hid her face as the pink strands blew ever so slightly in the wind. Time seemed to freeze as they stared at one another. He did not like this one bit. She seemed easily irritable and sarcastic. But, for the most part, first impressions were usually wrong. And this time, he hoped they were. I go by Minato, he said, offering the mist nin his hand. He waited for the slightest second, but as soon as he blinked she was gone. His hand slowly lowered back down in confusion. Where the did she go? He didn't have to wait long because he felt an immediate presence behind him. Sakura. Hello, I'm Ayumi, she stated, smiling. He whipped around to find her holding out her hand. Blonde hair, blue eyes, tan, muscular. He'll be such a shame to kill. Oh, so now you wanna shake hands? He said, crossing his arms. Sakura's smile vanished. Shake my hand. Minato's eyes widened as he quickly offered his hand. She grasped it and gave it a firm shake. I don't like him. When their connection broke, Sakura began walking further into the village. Come on, our hotel is this way. You shake hands like a man. Sakura's steps stopped. What did you say? Minato cleared his throat. I said, you shake hands like a man. By the time he finished his sentence he was standing 1 foot behind Sakura. Her eyebrow twitched. Sakura spun around and punched Minato square in the chest and sent him flying into the Frost Village's border wall. I definitely don't like him. After watching the snow that had rested on top of the wall bury Minato, she continued in the direction she was originally headed without bothering to wait for Minato to get up. Why does such an incredibly man have to be so damn annoying? She shook her head. At this rate, she was convinced there was no such thing as a well-rounded man. After she had walked 100 feet, Minato suddenly appeared by her side. She looked over at him. He's fast. I didn't even hear him get up. You should learn to rela, Minato began. Sakura cut in. I figured we would debrief in your room. Tomorrow we'll get up early and begin asking around the village if they've spotted our target. We'll scout the area around the village for signs of him and come back and plan our strategy on how we'll go about eliminating him. Any objections? Minato stated. Sakura looked over at him puzzled. What? Our target is a her, as in female. She looked over and smirked at him. I bet that rubs you the wrong way. Minato looked at her, raising his eyebrow. What are you talking about? I could tell when you first looked at me that you were shocked to find that I was female. And I couldn't help but note the slight hint of disappointment when you mentioned that our target is a girl, as well. So, you're completely. Women are very capable of being a threat to another village. In fact, I could very well kill you right now. Sakura chuckled at Minato's bewildered expression. You could not. You would probably be an easy challenge compared to my previous opponents. Sakura smirked. You will regret saying that. When they reached the hotel, Minato was about to walk straight up the receptionist's desk and ask for a room, but before he got the chance to open his mouth, he was being pulled towards the stairs. Seeing as though you were 2 days late, I took the liberty of getting a room for you, said Sakura. Could you let go of me, then? Minato asked. It's not like you're my mother. Sakura released his arm but kept her pace up the stairs. When she reached the third floor, she opened the door that led to the hallway and began walking towards the end. Our rooms are right across from each other at the end of the hallway. I thought it would be better that way. They arrived at the two last rooms. Sakura pointed at the one to their right. That'll your room. Here's your key. She offered him the key and he took it and opened his door. Before he could react, she was already waltzing into his room. Hey, where do you think you're going? Minato asked, surprised. You're going to debrief me, of course. Sakura innocently smiled when she sat on the edge of his bed. She watched as he cautiously approached her. Has anyone ever told you that you're a pushy person? Besides, I just got here. Minato argued. So, I just got here too. 2 days ago. Sakura shrugged. Minato narrowed his eyes. It wasn't my fault. Never mind, you're impossible. He walked over and leaned against the wall opposite her with his arms crossed. You're wasting time, she stated matter-of-factly. Okay. Well, before we begin, I would like to know more about you. I mean, after all, we do have to work together for the next few weeks, maybe months. And right now I would have to say my comfort level is at an all-time low. Sakura shrugged. Sure. My name is Ayumi. I have pink hair, green eyes, and I live in the Hidden Mist Village. You don't say. Naruto sighed. I'm actually trying to be serious here. Sakura smiled gently. Okay. I owe you at least that much. I did punch you into a wall. She cleared her throat. I wasn't born in Mist. I was born in another village. Don't spill too much information, Sakura. But I don't remember which one. I know it was small, but my parents don't talk about it. Yes, I have 2 parents. My mom is the best cook, ever. I have a little brother. Well, he's not technically my brother. My family all but legally adopted him when his fath, but that's another story. I'm almost never home. Trust be told, I hate being an assassin. And I have no idea what I plan to do with myself. Sakura trailed off and looked down at her lap. Minato smiled. Now, was that so hard? Sakura looked up and smirked. Bite me. I just might have to take you up on the offer, Minato winked. Sakura flushed mentally. She wasn't trying to flirt. Sakura wasn't even sure she knew how to flirt or what the concept of flirting was. She's never been in a real relationship or even gotten close with anyone of the opposite besides Shiro or her father. But Sakura was sure not going to display her thoughts on her face, one of her famous attributes. Now what about you? I hope you didn't intend for your question to be one-sided, she remarked. Personally, I don't really care to know much about you, but I'm not about to let you have an advantage over me. Sakura smirked. She felt his hovering gaze and raise a questioning eyebrow, but he shook his head and began to speak. I'm Minato, from the elite group of ninja from the Hidden Leaf. I have no parents, they died when I was a baby. No siblings. As a child, everyone I came in contact with hated me. He glanced to the side, as if remembering. I never let it get to me. I knew one day I would be here. Well, not in this situation, of course. He chuckled lightly. My one and only dream is to become Hokage, and I will. Opposites, Sakura whispered. He has something to strive for, but she has something that he will never have. What? Nothing. A serious expression returned to her face. So, are you going to debrief me or not? Fine. He agreed, but stayed standing across from her. I don't know too much about her. All I know is that my Hokage has considered her a threat. A threat? Yes. According to intel, she rivals our Hokage in medical ninjutsu. Not to mention she is an ex-nin of the Leaf. He said, watching her intently. So, she could possibly know too much. Yes, that's the idea. He sighed, leaning back on the heels of his feet. I don't know where she is or her last location. My guess is that she has evaded anyone who has tried to look for her or has simply passed unnoticed. He finished. That's all you know. Pretty much. He shrugged. Does this girl have a name? He smiled. Oh, yes, of course. Haruno Sakura. Sakura. Sakura's blood ran cold. What did he just? In the split second that she lost it, She recomposed herself. She was not about to let this leaf ninja get the best of her, even if he didn't know she was his target, yet. She began to chew on the inside of her lip. It was a nasty habit of hers that she did when she got nervous. Are you sure you don't know anything else about her? Sakura wanted to confirm he knew nothing about her appearance. Minato stood with a thoughtful look on his face before he shook his head. Nope. That's all I know. Sakura nodded. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and head to my room. What time did you want to get started tomorrow? How about 9? That'll give the shops enough time to open. Sure. Sakura grinned. I'll see you in the morning, she said as she was walking out of his room. Are you sure you don't want to start now? I mean, isn't tomorrow morning considered late for you? Sakura stopped and turned around till she was glaring at him. Don't push your luck. I just may decide to wake you up at 4 o'clock to scout the entire Frost Country. Minato rolled his eyes. Oh please, I'm used to waking up at 4 o'clock. Sakura scoffed. Yay, I'm sure. And with that, she faced the door and stormed out of the room. The second his door closed, she was already thinking about what to do with her new information. I am his target. How could this information not be known? There's absolutely no way I could be a threat to the leaf. This is absurd. How on earth are we supposed to look for myself? What the hell am I going to do? Sakura found herself sitting on her bed with her head in hands. She took a deep breath. Okay, Sakura, calm down. This is a simple situation. You aren't one of the best ninjas in the mist for nothing. What to do? What to do? Somehow I need to make another, Sakura. There is one jutsu, but it takes a very precise amount of chakra. She can't look like me, so. What should she look like? How about long, blonde hair, tall and slender. And she can wear the extra clothes that I packed. Tonight I will send her out to make sure that some of villagers and shop owners see Sakura. Unfortunately, she will have to have my green eyes. That's the drawback to this jutsu. Tomorrow, sometime between afternoon and evening, I'll send her out again and make sure Minato and I spot her somewhere outside of the village. After a couple of minutes I'll have her disappear. In a couple days, we'll see her again and fight her. The battle will last a while, and when he's too intent on killing her, I'll simply kill him. Sakura sighed. See, Sakura, easy solution to an easy problem. The hardest part is going to be creating this clone every time I need it. It takes a lot of chakra and I have to put the right amount to make her perfect and believable. But that's okay. You've done this plenty of times. Just this time your life depends on it. Sakura stood up and walked over to look out of the window. She smiled to herself. At least this mission won't be as hard at the beginning. Minato is definitely going to be entertaining. I wonder why my village wants him dead. Surely he's well liked and respected. But then again, the leaf wants me dead. Sakura began to think back to the debriefing just a few minutes ago. So I rival the famous Hokage in medical ninjutsu, huh? She smirked. That's definitely a self-esteem booster. But I don't understand the knowing too much part. My parents weren't ninja and therefore didn't know any village secrets. I had only been a genin for less than a week. It doesn't make sense. Before Sakura's thoughts could continue, she noticed Minato walking past on the street down below. I didn't even hear him open his door, but before she could ponder on that any longer, her mind came up with a brilliant plan. This is the perfect time to send out Sakura. Already excited, Sakura hurried over and sat on her bed. She made a few quick hand signs, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Sakura's exact clone appeared in front of her. Okay Sakura, now concentrate. She began to picture exactly what she wanted her clone to look like. Once she had it visualized in her head, she made another series of hand signs and began to concentrate. Chakra began to flow from Sakura into her clone at a slow, steady pace. Long blonde hair, tall. After a few minutes she opened her eyes to find the picture in her mind displayed right in front of her. Sakura jumped up and smiled. You're perfect. Sakura held out her arms and began to examine her body, Wow, I'm hot. Sakura narrowed her eyes at her clone. Excuse me, I think we look just fine. Sakura rolled her eyes. Yay, because that's why we've had so many boyfriends. You know how busy we are. We don't have time for a boyfriend. Sakura was offended. Is my own clone dissing me? Well, while you're making excuses, all of us are patiently waiting for you to finally find somebody to start a family with. We're 23. And if the freaking leaf is after us, I don't expect to live much longer. Sakura glared at her clone. You've said enough. I'm sending you out now. Sakura shrugged. Whatever, she said as she began walking to the hotel room door. Maybe I'll do us both a favor and just seduce this Minato. He is extremely gorgeous, by the way. Sure. And irritating as hell. Now go, before I just disperse you. Yay, yay, Sakura said as she closed the door behind her. Why are clones always so damn annoying? Naruto. What was her problem? Naruto's hand reached up to scratch the back of his head as he gazed around his room, deep in thought. 1 minute he is debriefing her. The next, she goes pale and quickly leaves. He had barely noticed, to be honest. Her face composed back to normal in the split second that it had changed. Why would she react that way to a name? He leaned back onto his rough bed the hotel provided. Naruto glanced up at his appearance in the hanging mirror by the side of his bed and laughed. He looked like he'd seen a massacre. He shook his head, returning to his feet and heading for the door. He was overreacting like always. Ayumi must have heard the name before in her missions. After all, Sakura is a famous rogue. Not to mention, she rivals the Hokage. What village in their right mind would ignore that fact? He needed to stop stressing over little things. It could be dangerous. What he needed to do was relax. He pushed open the door and left the hotel swiftly. What he needed to do was find a ramen shop. The temperature dropped along with the time of day. He could see every star and every constellation. It was different, but beautiful. In Konoha, the city lights usually covered up the night sky. But now the ominous glow shone brightly overhead. Instinctively, he put his finger up and began tracing them with his pointer finger. Each one had a different story. He remembered the slam. Naruto drew in sharp breath and pulled back from the wall he had just run into. Bringing his hand to his face, he quickly looked around to see if anyone had noticed his stupidness. Sighing out of relief, he saw no one around. The streets were deserted. Naruto rubbed his nose where the pain was now a dull ache, hardly noticeable. Naruto, you dumbass, he mumbled angrily to himself and continued down the snow-covered path deeper into the town. Speaking of stupid, his mind reminded him, how stupid was it being thrown into a freaking wall by a mist nin? He groaned at the thought. Why did his brain remind him? He wanted to be Hokage and he couldn't even dodge a fist. What was with that girl? One moment, she seemed slightly pleasant and the next he was off his feet, meters away covered in snow. She sure had a good arm, he hated to admit. Dread loomed over him as he thought about the weeks he would have to work with her. It would be impossible, legitimately impossible. He just wouldn't be able to get along with her. Her temper wasn't even the worst of it. Besides her uncontrollable anger, she held this air about her that left him more confused than he came in with. She made him nervous. His heart always speeds up when looking at her and he couldn't think of better way to describe it. Oh, why did he have the feeling he would have to kill this girl before she killed him? Well, not literally of course. Naruto just knew he'd make a mistake, piss her off, and maybe end up in a ditch somewhere wondering what the hell happened. He rolled his eyes and emptied all thoughts of his partner. He came out here to relax, not panic. A delicious aroma enveloped him. His sixth sense picked up on it automatically. His eyes darted around him as his stomach rumbled with protest. The streets were dark but the smell had to be coming from somewhere. Ah, there you are. He smiled seeing an open cafe not too far away from his current position. It was like an open bar, similar to the one back in the Leaf. Wasting no more time, Naruto speed walked over to the hut. His mouth watered as his eyes scrolled down the menu hanging above. Jumping into an available seat in the middle of the single row of chairs, he faced a round man with beady eyes. Welcome to. Naruto cut him off before he could finish. I'd like 5 bowls of your best ramen. He yelled the words out as if he couldn't contain them any longer. The waiter's eyes widened. 5 bowls. He stuttered, appalled by the quantity. You're right, he said, pretending to ponder the thought. Make that 6. Naruto smiled brightly. Why yes, sir, he said, turning back into the kitchen, his eyes wide as saucers. A chuckle from beside him caught Naruto's attention. I forgot how much Leaf Shinobi could eat. His eyes landed on a man a bar stool away from him. He had grayish hair and wore all white clothing with some silver accents through his attire. A frost symbol was attached to his left arm, which was draped across the counter holding onto his mug. He had a friendly smile if it wasn't for the scar that ran over his nose. His eyes were tired and crinkled with age. His rugged appearance reminded him of the third Hokage. Most ninjas don't survive long enough to reach old age. Naruto wondered how he appeared out of nowhere. Had this man already been here? Naruto thought to himself. Was I too distracted by the ramen to notice? He thought again, his eyes narrowing at the thought he had messed up, again. The Frost Nin smiled slightly, not revealing his teeth. He pulled his left arm from the table and turned to where his full body was facing Naruto. I'm Akane, head ninja of the Frost Village. He told Naruto, offering his hand to shake. Without a second thought, Naruto grasped the man's hand. Minato of the Hidden Leaf. The man's eyes widened a fraction of an inch, then he smiled slightly. Say, you kinda look like the Hokage. Naruto almost choked on his own salvia. Him. Look like Granny Tsunade. Was he senile or something? The old ninja continued. Yay. The one with yellowish hair, right? Naki. No. Natsu. Namikaze. Yay, that's his name, I think. The Frost Nin said. No. He hasn't been our Hokage for many years now. Naruto told the man slowly, trying to appear surprised. Most individuals don't notice the resemblance to his father. Weird. Maybe he could play it off. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. It's been a while since I last visited the Leaf. It's so far away and all. Who is your new Hokage? He asked, completely fine with his mistake. Tsunade. Naruto told the man, wondering if the man would forget the second he told him. Huh, never heard of her. He trailed off deep in thought as the first round of Naruto's ramen arrived. Thanks, he told the waiter before digging into the bowl. While eating, he realized he was in no danger. The Frost Nin was old and must have had a sharper mind when his father was still living. He sighed, delighted, for the almost threat being false, but mostly because he hasn't had real food in 2 days. Throwing the empty bowl to the side, he raised his eyebrow at the waiter as the frightened cook ran back into the kitchen to get rounds 2 and 3. He rushed back in and placed the steaming bowls in front of him. Smiling, Naruto picked his chopsticks back up and bowls 2 and 3 soon met their fate. Ah, he sighed, leaning back, his stomach full. That will be 500 ryo. The waiter said, coming back around to face the Leaf Junin. Pulling out the correct amount of money, he handed the waiter the money for the ramen. Naruto leaned back in the stool as far as he could without falling off. He stared at his accomplishment. A stack of leaning empty bowls. Didn't think you could do it at first. The same Frost Nin confessed. But you had me convinced after the 4th bowl. PSSH. That was nothing. I'm watching what I'm eating. Naruto told the Frost Ninja and glanced at the cook who stood staring at him with wide eyes. Isn't that something? The Frost Shinobi muttered, followed by a loud hearty laugh. Between laughs he managed to ask Naruto a question. Tell me, Minato, what's a Leaf Shinobi doing all the way up here? Naruto smiled at the man. Just passing through. On your way to Lightning Country? He asked, his eyes more focused. No, intel gathering. That's all. He told the Frost Nin, trying not to spill too much. With the Mist Nin? He inquired. Surprise flickered through him. How did you know? Well, for one, she arrived here before you did. I noticed her waiting for something. I didn't say anything though. She didn't seem to notice me. And 2. I am the head of protecting this village, so I watch who comes in and out of our borders. We may not have a cage, but we're pretty efficient without one. He told Naruto, coughing when he finished. Naruto laughed. Should have expected as much. The head Frost Nin appeared like he was about to say something, but then he rose to his feet. Sorry. Forgot I had to be somewhere. He nodded his head towards Naruto's direction. Pleasure to meet you, Minato. If you need any help with your mission, feel free to seek me out. He turned to leave. Wait. Naruto called out to him, halting him. Why are you helping us? This isn't your mission. The Frost Nin smiled slightly. My family line was saved by the Leaf Village in the Third Ninja War. If it wasn't for the Leaf taking us in, we would have stayed here and been right in the middle of a battle zone. Who knows if my ancestors would have survived? With that, he disappeared outside, his white uniform blending him in with the snow. Huh. Naruto mumbled, standing to his feet, his mind still contemplating what the Frost had Shinobi told him. He left the shop and glanced at the snow where the old man had disappeared. No footprints. God, that Frost Nin was good. His stomach full and his eyelids starting to droop, he changed his course for the hotel. It would be an early start in the morning for the search of the infamous Sakura Haruno. Who knows where she could be hiding? She could look no different than a civilian for all he knew. He pulled his red cloak closer around his body as the wind blew, throwing up ice wind in his face. The village lights were almost all out as the town began to sleep. He shuffled faster towards the hotel, fatigue hitting him like a rock. A crunching sound made its over to his ears. It was distant, but the way the footsteps fell caught his attention. Sidestepping, Naruto moved into an alleyway, pressing his back up against the wall as best he could. The katana hidden beneath layers of his clothing prevented from his back from fully touching the brick, but it was the best he could do. As the crunching noise drew nearer, he realized the noise was in fact footsteps in the snow. The owner of which walked loudly, but not as loud as a normal civilian. It hit him that this person must be a ninja trying to conceal their identity. Naruto kept his mind calm and clear. It could very well be Akane or another Frost Nin on his nightly rounds. A shadow passed as the person walked right by the alleyway. Poking his head out just enough to see, he had to bite back a sharp intake of breath. This was no civilian, he had been right. But it was also no Frost Ninja. It was a girl, tall one at that. She had her long blonde hair drawn back into ponytail with her bangs cut straight across, covering her eyes. She wore a simple purple top with black pants. He thought her harmless at first, but a few details stuck out in her appearance. And a few details could change the course of any decision. Strapped around her waist were 2 small scrolls. The buckle holding them in was the quick access type, which meant if she had to, she could remove the scroll within seconds of her choosing. Another detail he almost missed pointed itself out to him when her leg moved forward as she kept walking. There was a difference in the way her pant leg fell on her thigh. It gave him the impression she had a concealed weapon beneath her layer of clothing. That always meant bad news, he sighed. The last detail he noticed was very simple, really. She wore no jacket even though it felt like 50 below out here. Even a civilian who planned on going to the frost would pack accordingly. That showed she was not from around here, crossing her out from being a Frost Nin or traveling civilian. Could it be possible? Was this Sakura Haruno, the ex-ninja of the Hidden Leaf that he was ordered to assassinate? The one who rivaled his Hokage with medical ninjutsu and progressing strength? If that was true, she would already know Naruto was in the alleyway. He didn't cover his signature or even attempt to. A ninja of that amount of skill would have seen his failed attempt at hiding. Crap. Naruto cursed himself quietly. He glanced back out from the alleyway. She was gone. Almost like she was never there to begin with, just like a figment of his imagination. He pulled himself out of the dark corner and followed the footprints left in the snow clear as daylight. It was like she was inviting him to follow her. The tracks stopped abruptly as if the owner just vanished. He turned his head right to left looking for a way the girl could have possibly gone. He jerked his head to the top of a roof nearby at the sound of a shingle falling off onto the snow. Wait! Naruto called out after the shadow figure that turned back and disappeared onto the houses. Wasting no time, he jumped off his feet and onto the house. The snow gave away slightly at his weight, but before it could crumble, he was already pushing off and taking flight after the shadow. The girl, or what he assumed the shadow was, moved quickly from house to house. Never once did she stumble or falter. Naruto tried to keep up, he honestly did. But he just wasn't accustomed to the Frost Village's environment. With one faulty step on a snow-covered roof, the snow gave way and so did his feet. He slid off the building and threw his arms up over his face to cover the impact at the last second. Naruto felt his body suspended in air for a second before he landed in a deep pile of snow with a thud. Bits of snow flew up on the air and rained down on him as he glared at the roof. He looked like a damn snow globe. With a frustrated yell, he clawed his way out of the snow and pulled himself back onto the roof. The girl was gone, again. But just when he thought it wasn't his lucky day, Naruto noticed the footprints still intact on the snow. Smiling at the thought of finally catching the mysterious girl, he took off again following the trail. House by house, he kept going. His eyes darted around in all directions looking for any sight of the girl, but to no avail. She couldn't have gone far, he kept telling himself. He pushed himself harder, straining his vision to see farther. Snow, houses, trees. That was it. No girl. After a while, he slowed down to a halt on top of a two-story house. He gazed to his left for the longest time, trying to end the mini-battle in his head. He swore he had seen that same house on the left 3 times already. Or maybe it was just the way the houses in this village were built. They were all similar to one another. He wiped his brow, sweat starting to form along his face. How far did this girl go without stopping? Naruto glanced down at the tracks he had been following and a random suggestion popped into his brain. Lifting his foot up, he placed it into the footprint in the snow. Humiliation and annoyance hit him like a ton of bricks. His foot was a perfect fit to the tracks. Naruto lifted his head into the air and howled with anger. He had been following himself for the past 3 hours. Naruto. His heart was pounding, hammering loudly against his ribs. His body was tense and ready as his heart pumped blood through his veins. He knew he had no reason to be scared, but there was something wrong, very wrong. He was in the Frost Village, he was sure of it. The buildings were familiar, but they were not covered in snow, or even ice. He could see the green grass as the sun's rays danced across it. It reminded him of the sea. Like a domino effect, the waves of grass crashed into each other in sequence. A cool breeze fluttered his hair. He was no longer the only one here. It was that girl from before. The blonde who had carefully avoided him, the one who had led him on a wild goose chase. This girl had to be none other than Sakura Haruno. Naruto made a move to take a step towards her, but he hesitated. She stared into his eyes, her expression blank. He tried again but couldn't move. He quickly realized he hadn't hesitated before. He was paralyzed, not by fear, or admiration, or any other silly emotion. He just couldn't move. His legs were not responding. Was this a genjutsu? What was what he tried to call out, but he couldn't form the words. They died on his lips. It was then he realized that no part of his body could move. Not his arms, not his legs, he couldn't even blink. Upon his realization, Sakura slowly approached him while never once breaking the contact her eyes held on his. Pale green eyes, eyes so familiar, but he couldn't find a single memory to support it. He felt himself try to lean back away from her, but of course his body was useless, ignoring his commands. She stopped a foot away from him, her expression still blank. Right then the scene changed. It was no longer Sakura staring at him, it was Ayumi. She reached behind her and pulled out her sword and lowered the weapon to her side. Her eyes hardened as her eyebrows pulled together. He struggled against the impossible paralysis he was stuck in, but to no avail. He was trapped. He had lost. It's amazing what can result from one minor mistake. Don't you agree? Ayumi told him, her voice so different than it usually was. Without another word, she pulled her sword back and brought it forward with superhuman speed. The grass that had just been a beautiful green was now stained with dark, red blood. Naruto jerked upright in his bed as he searched for the non-existent threat, his heart pounding uncontrollably. As his vision cleared, and he realized it was only a dream, he relaxed back into the hotel bed. A loud rapping against his door turned his attention elsewhere. Naruto slid his fingers roughly through his hair before pushing himself off the bed and yelling, "I'm coming." He pulled on a pair of black pants and slipped his black long-sleeve jumpsuit over it. He knocked over a couple of objects trying to find his green flat jacket. The continued rapping on the door aggravated him. Giving up on the vest, he made his way to the door. Swinging it open, he came face to face with the pink-haired Miss Nin. "What do you want?" he asked, his eyelids still heavy with sleep. "I thought you were used to waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning." She smirked as her arms crossed in front of her chest. 4 o'clock? He asked, twisting around just enough to peek at the clock in his room. "So it is," he confirmed while slowly facing the Miss Nin again. "Are you ready? Or do I need to come back in a half an hour?" she asked. He just now noticed she was fully clothed. "Of course, I'm ready now. Just one moment," Naruto told her, heading back into his room looking for his vest and cloak. "I can't believe she literally woke me up at 4 a.m. he grumbled, finding his vest and zipping it on. "Crazy Miss Nin." He heard her snicker from outside his door. "Correction, eavesdropping. Crazy Miss Nin," he said loud enough for her to hear before grabbing his katana and cloak. Naruto clipped his weapon around his shoulder and shoved one of his arms through the armhole. He then made his way to the door and shoved his other arm into his cloak. "Where to?" he asked, wondering where they would go at 4 in the morning. "Well, we have some time before the villagers wake up, so I thought we would check around the outskirts to see if any campsites have been covered up or put out in the past few weeks," Ayumi responded. "Check for what? Oh, wait. Duh. Sakura." The memory of the blonde-haired ninja forced its way into his mind. Speaking of which, Naruto started, closing his hotel door as they made their way down the hallway to the stairs. "I think I saw her last night." "Really? How can you be sure?" Ayumi asked, surprised. "Yay. She was blonde and had scrolls on her person. I knew she couldn't have been civilian." He stopped at the edge of the stairs. "I could bore you with all the details, but to make a long story short, she avoided me and ran away when I gave chase." He started down the stairs, not waiting for an answer. He heard her footsteps after him and he continued out the hotel door into the chilly morning air. "Her chakra was suppressed and I couldn't see her eyes, so I couldn't give you a proper description anyway," he told Ayumi, not wanting to sound unobservant. "Why do you think this girl could have been Sakura?" Ayumi asked as they trudged through the snow towards the village gate. It took them 2 minutes to reach it. The hotel had been surprisingly close. He glanced down at her through his eyelashes. "Besides the fact she was hiding her chakra and ran from me, I have no idea. Sakura, or whoever she was, is the only unknown ninja from these parts. So that's my reason, I guess." As they exited the village and entered the forest, he stepped over a fallen log. "Weird how she happens to show up on my first day looking for her." Ayumi stopped and gave him a weird look. He smiled and offered his hand to help her over the log. "I mean, when do you actually find your target on the first day? Hopefully, we can find her and leave as soon as possible." His smile grew bigger at the thought of leaving and heading back to the leaf. She rolled her eyes, appearing more at ease, and pushed his hand away as she easily jumped off the rotten wood. "Ladies first." He motioned towards the rows of trees. "You'd get lost anyway," Ayumi mumbled, stepping in front of him and continuing through the snow-covered branches. Remember to look for signs of disturbances. He chuckled, following close behind her. This isn't my first assassination, sweet cheeks. She abruptly stopped, her hand holding onto the bark of a nearby tree she was about to use as leverage. What did you say? Her voice annoyed as the bark cracked under her fingertips. Sweet chips. I said sweet chips. You ever had any of those? They taste pretty good. His sweat dropped as he smiled awkwardly. That's what I thought you said. She let go of the tree and pushed off of it. Hey. Naruto followed after her. A silence followed after their brief conversation as they took refuge inside their own minds. Naruto never lost pace with her, even though she seemed to be trying to leave him behind. Every now and then they would stop and rub their palm over the snow, searching for signs of human presence. But more often than not it was nothing. He would vaguely wonder why Tsunade did not send Kiba on this mission. It would be easier for him to track a person's scent after all. But before he could even expand on the idea, he remembered Kiba had currently been on a mission when he returned to the leaf. Daydreaming, Minato. A voice called out. He looked up and realized he had stopped walking. Yay, sorry. He replied, jogging to catch up to her. There are a couple of broken branches on the ground, heading this way. She said, looking at the ground. And sure enough, there was. Look, Ayumi told him, her finger pointing out towards a frozen lake hidden by a few large trees. I guarantee if Sakura was in these parts, she stopped there. Why do you say that? Naruto asked, passing her up and approaching the iced-over lake. She scoffed from behind him. Besides the fact that it's a water source. He stopped at the edge where ice met land. He bent down and placed his bare hand over the ice, feeling how thick it was. It was thick enough to stand on but not jump. He glanced along the riverbank before his eyes rested on a crack in the ice a little farther out from his current position. He moved into a better position to see and squatted down. Out a little ways from the shore, a small circle was drawn into the ice. The circle was cut all the way through the ice until it hit water. A small layer of new ice had formed over the hole, however. He tilted his head, gazing at the circle. He smiled at his discovery. She had been here. Now the question was, how long ago? He drew a kunai from the back of his pocket and reached forward to try to poke the ice over the small hole. If it broke through easily, Sakura was still here. If not, she left a while ago. Straightening out his arm, he reached for the ice-covered hole but with no success. It was too far out with his legs still on land. Sighing, he pulled the metal back in his pocket and stood up. Minato, don't, Ayumi said from behind him, as if reading his mind. Don't what? He asked, taking a light step onto the ice and another over to the hole. She sighed, watching him, shaking her head. Idiot. Another step, a shake of her head. Another step, a warning. Another step, silence. He reached down to poke the ice above the hole and it cracked easily under his fingers. She was still close by. His mind yelled. He smiled lopsidedly at Ayumi, proud to have found this before her. She was about to answer before his left foot sank a little and a crack echoed in his ears. Minato. Don't move. The ice is thin where you are. Ayumi told him, her eyes wide as she looked at his feet. Of course. She was a mist nin and therefore used water techniques. He realized his mistake too late. The ice he had tested was close to the shore and was thicker. As you move into the middle, the ice becomes thin because of the depth of the water. He glanced down at the crack that had formed from the hole. It ran right between his feet. Another second passed and little cracks began to form around his left foot. He slowly brought his head up to look at Ayumi, who was now at the edge of the bank. Take my hand, she ordered him, and she reached her hand out towards him. More microscopic cracks appeared as he slowly lifted his hand up towards hers. A series of cracks surrounded his feet. Some of the water began to seep through and flow above the ice. Ayumi stared at him, a silent command passing between them. Then, she nodded her head. Now. He leaned forward and grasped her hand just as the shift of weight sent a loud crack into the air as the ice gave way. He felt ice-cold water envelope his feet as Ayumi pulled him towards shore. He tried to avoid colliding with her, but he had no control of where she pulled him. His body slammed down into hers and they both fell off their feet into the snow on the bank of the lake. Naruto's face slammed into the snow above her shoulder, while he heard her let out all the air she was holding in her lungs. Knowing he was crushing her, he rose to support himself with his elbows and looked down at her, making sure he did no real damage. Her hand was pinned under his arm, where their hands still held each other's. Her other hand was trapped beneath his chest. The snow had made her hair wet. It was almost surreal. He was unbelievably close to her, his lips mere inches away from hers. Her eyes, usually dull, were slightly brighter. Before he could stop himself and reserve what dignity he still had left, his eyes glanced down at her body. He had never noticed just how damn good-looking this Miss Nin was. His smile turned to a look of horror as he realized their position. But that was nothing compared to the glare on her face. He did notice the slight blush on her cheeks, but he was sure it was because of anger. In a split second, he made a decision. He rolled off of the top of her and jumped to his feet. Within seconds he was sprinting through the woods. If he learned anything upon their meeting, she was quick to anger. Minato. He heard her scream, and more frightfully, her pursuit. He crashed through the trees as fast as he could, branches breaking on impact with his body. You get back here. Her voice was closer now. He couldn't help the wide grin that spread across his face as he booked it through the trees. Naruto heard the crashing of her pursuit through the trees as he sped up. He glanced back at her and saw her pink hair poking out through the branches. He slowed down when he reached a snow-covered cliff blocking his path. He turned around into a defensive crouch. Ayumi, it wasn't my fault. She pushed her way through the branches before stopping right in front of him. You're lucky I'm tired, she told him between gasps. I told you not to go. Idiot. The ice was thin where the hole was. It's a little too late to inform me now, don't ya think? Naruto chuckled. Are you trying to catch hypothermia? She asked, pulling a strand of her hair behind her ear. You didn't have to help me. He defended. I was considering it, but then I'd have to cross the ice to drag you out. And that would risk me falling in and meeting the same fate. She sighed. Listen about the, you know, he started, trying to make the situation as less awkward as possible. Just forget it, she replied, glancing over to the side. Right, he agreed. The layer of ice that had begun to cover the hole was easily breakable, meaning she could still be in close proximity. Wow, you catch on pretty fast, she stated sarcastically. Let's go. We're wasting time. He sighed, looking at her. Unbelievable. And just when he thought she was beginning to slowly open up, she closes up again. Let's head back. I bet the civilians are waking up. Ayumi told him, eager to leave as she headed back through the woods. Speaking of civilians, Ayumi, I did meet the head frost shinobi last night. He might be of some use. Naruto offered, remembering the man. Good. That will help us out. She nodded, but didn't glance at him. He let out a breath, pursing his lips, and averted his attention to the side. Great. That stunt pissed her off. It's not like he meant it. She was the one who pulled him to her. Damn Mist Ninja. So unpredictable. He put his hands behind his head, supporting it. Not even 2 minutes into the walk back he was already tired of the silence. Well, if she wanted to be serious, he would be serious and get some information out of it while he was at it. Can I ask you a personal question, Ayumi? He asked, glancing at her through his eyelashes. Depends. How personal? She answered, her eyes still trained forward. He let out a deep breath before crossing his arms. Do you like what you do? Excuse me, she asked, stopping and turning to face him. Being an assassin, he elaborated, watching her reaction. How did you know? She asked, unsure of him. An assassin can tell if another is one too. I can see it in your eyes. You can't hide it from me, Ayumi. He explained. She merely rolled her eyes and continued their walk. You get used to it. He jogged to catch up to her. That's not what I asked. Why are you even asking? She said, obviously wanting off the subject. Why are you refusing to answer? Because I hate to see people like us. Your eyes hold years of tragedy and death behind them, more than any human sees in a lifetime. He told her, it's our job, our career. It's not like we have a choice. She pointed out, true. But don't you ever wish it wasn't like that? That we didn't kill for a living? He asked, just wanting to hear her side of it all. You don't know everything about me. She told him, dropping her gaze. PSSH. I think I do. I see it, too, every time I look in the mirror, Ayumi. Why must you lie to yourself? He asked, staring at her back. Physical appearance that holds no scars, but the insides are completely torn up. Green eyes, once bright, now dulled with death and dark with the sight of bloodshed. A girl he previously believed to be heartless and cold, but in truth, she was just broken. You think you know. She stopped mid-step to face him, her eyes burning with unknown pain. 20 people last month. Over 300 in my whole career. She shouted. His eyes widened. That number was huge. He hasn't even killed half that number. Her soul has taken on much more damage than he could have ever imagined. Broken beyond repair, somewhere deep in his mind offered. Ayumi, I didn't know. He started, but she cut him off. Forget it. She waved him off and continued until they broke through the tree line. And just like that, no matter what the cost, he wanted to put the pieces of her tortured soul back together. They were still not friends, not even acquaintances. But an understanding just passed through them. They were both trapped by where their loyalty lies. Sakura. Sakura had receded into the recesses of her mind. How dare he think he knows everything about me because we have one minor thing in common. But she wasn't about to show him how deeply it affected her. Instead, she pretended as if she was pissed off, as per usual. To distract herself, she began to think back to their awkward situation with the ice. Thinking about it only made her mad, which made her expression genuine. That flippin' idiot, to think that he could safely reach the hole and make it back to land without so much as making a crack. She mentally shook her head. He's lucky he has the body of a god, or he would not have escaped that situation unharmed. Suddenly, the part of her mind that barely made itself noticed, made itself known. His body. I could stare at it all day, and in the split second that that thought had occurred, she quickly took it back. Sakura, get a grip of yourself. You're going to make this mission harder than it already is. She stole a glance at him with her peripheral vision. Still, it wouldn't hurt to try and get a better glimpse. Yano, I still can't believe you woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I bet it's only like 6 now. The villagers are probably not even up yet. Only people by the name of Ayumi get up at that crazy hour. He was trying to distract her. In a weird way, it relieved her. Sakura decided to play along. I highly doubt that, especially considering my name isn't Ayumi. My mom would never dream of getting up at that ungodly hour, as she puts it. Besides, aren't you the one that said you were used to getting up at that hour? I only tried to please you. She added with a wink. Many people in my village get up around that hour to complete a morning workout or begin their training. And I'm going to assume you're one of them? Minato asked, already appearing as if he knew the answer. Sakura shrugged. Minato shook his head. Crazy Mist Nin. And what do they do after this morning workout? Lay around and watch the clouds roll by the rest of the day. His pitch began to lower as he mumbled, but then again, I do have this one friend who basically watches clouds for a living. He trailed off. After he finished his thought, Minato's face suddenly lit up. He turned to look at Sakura. Have you ever had a boyfriend? Sakura grinned. You're a scatterbrain, you know that. Minato narrowed his eyes and frowned. That wasn't my question. Sakura became serious again. Why do you want to know? I don't see how this pertains to the mission. He shrugged. Well, why not tell me? After this mission, we'll never see each other again, and the information won't be any good to me when I get back to the Leaf. When you get back to the leaf in a body bag. Sakura sighed. I suppose you're right. She paused. The answer to your question is no, I have never had a boyfriend. Sakura turned to watch Minato's reaction and was shocked to find that he seemed surprised by her answer. It confused her. Are you surprised? Well, yay. I mean, your gore really cool. He quickly stared ahead, trying to hide his embarrassment from his almost slip up. After a few seconds, he turned back to her, recomposed, and said gently, it's just kinda shocking. Why not? Sakura looked at him. Is it not obvious? What is? Other than the fact that I've been too busy to even think about having feelings for someone else since I was 15, I'm not exactly all that pretty. Not one of the men in my village have shown the least bit interest in me. She shrugged. He slightly recoiled at her statement. Not pretty. Ayumi, I'm not trying to make our partnership awkward, but in my opinion you are beautiful. After a couple of seconds he chuckled. Did he just? Are you laughing? For some reason, that hurt Sakura. It felt like she was just pricked in the heart with a kunai. Minato must have realized what he had just done because his smile quickly faded and he put up his hands defending himself. No, Ayumi, I didn't laugh because my statement was a joke. I was just thinking that all of those men were probably terrified to approach you. Sakura relaxed slightly, though she was not fully satisfied with his response. What is that supposed to mean? Minato sighed and softly smiled at her. You take some things too seriously, you know that. Ayumi, you are not the most approachable person. You give off a don't mess with me vibe, and I can guarantee you that it scares the hell out of those other men, including the ninja. I am a guy after all, I do know what I'm talking about. For example, do you ever watch people's expressions as you walk by them? We are here in the frost for one day and you already command total attention. You are just not aware of the affect you have on men. Yesterday, even some of the women held a hint of jealousy in their eyes. Sakura went quiet to ponder what Minato had just said. Could that really be the reason? She looked over at Minato as a thought popped into her head. She smirked. Did you call me beautiful? He turned to look at her. He was either good at concealing his embarrassment, which she knew wasn't the case, or he simply wasn't embarrassed. Yes, I did. Sakura turned her attention to the path they were walking on, as they were still not out of the forest yet. I have never been called beautiful. What if he's just saying that so I'll be nice to him? But he didn't look as though he was lying. Have you ever had a girlfriend? Minato seemed unprepared for her question. I would rather not talk abo, he ended his objection when he saw Sakura raise her eyebrow. Alright, you deserve to hear my answer as well. Yes, I have had a girlfriend, unfortunately. Explain, Sakura said. He sighed. Her name is Hinata. She had been obsessed with me since I could remember. I really didn't take notice of it until I was about 17. Yes, I know, that is a long time. I'm sure you've realized I am not the most observant person, he added when she gave him an amused smile. When I did realize it, I thought why not give her a chance. She was gorgeous and was the heiress to a very well-known family. He paused, as if remembering. Sakura gently urged him to continue. What happened? At first, the relationship went pretty well. She was my first girlfriend, so I was inexperienced, but I was a complete gentleman, however. I don't know what happened, really. The relationship just started falling apart after a couple of months. We became distant, though I don't believe we ever really got close. I think she realized I wasn't all that she had cracked me up to be. In the back of her mind, I think she had decided that I couldn't give her what she was asking for. She was expecting too much out of me at such an age. He stopped. Sakura decided she shouldn't push him any further. It was obvious this was a sensitive subject for him. But of his own accord he continued, I think she thought I wasn't good enough for her. I think her obsession was based off of my determination. She wasn't the strongest ninja. I don't come from money. My parents died the day I was born, Minato trailed off. When Sakura finally decided he wasn't going to continue any further, She reached over with her left hand and placed a hand on his shoulder and smiled sincerely. They both stopped walking and stared at each other for a few seconds. A small smile graced Minato's lips. Sakura felt a small connection pass between them. And as if on cue, they both continued walking at the same time. Maybe this Hinata was just annoyed as hell of him. I can sympathize with that. Deep in the back of Sakura's mind she knew this statement was not true. But she had to make up a lie in order for her newfound feelings to stay hidden. This is what I will keep telling myself. Maybe I'll actually believe it. Silence enveloped Sakura and Minato as they finally burst forth from the tree line and continued into the Frost Village. When they walked back through the gates, Sakura looked over at Minato and almost stopped walking. Sakura, you freaking idiot. How dare you let yourself open up with your target? This is the stupidest thing you've ever done. Sakura quickly turned her attention back to the street and began focusing on her mission. We're most likely going to go back to the forest later today after collecting more information about Sakura. I'll suggest we take a break and I'll go back to the hotel. I knew I would need a Senbon for this mission. And I still have a little poison left from my previous mission. I will apply the poison to the Senbon. I saw a spot in the forest I thought might be a clearing. That's exactly what I need. When we reach it, I will seduce him. I'm gonna have to suck up my pride. Hopefully, that dope believes there's already a little something between us. I'll have to build on that. As I lean in to kiss him, I am going to stick the Senbon in at the back of his neck near the back of the vertebrae. The type of poison I will use will paralyze the spinal cord, affecting the entire nervous system. Half a minute after the initial injection, the body will be momentarily stunned, which of course means Minato will be fully aware of what will be happening. After the 30 seconds, the poison will reach his brain, causing a menial hemorrhage, which will kill him. Perfect. Sakura let out a sigh. There, Sakura. All it took was a little thinking. Is something wrong? Minato asked. Sakura looked over at him, puzzled. Before she could ask what he was talking about, it occurred to her. Oh, no, of course not. I guess I was just anticipating the long day ahead of us. Minato chuckled. You're the one that decided to start the day at 4 o'clock. Some habits are hard to change. He shrugged. I suppose. Do you mind if we stop by the hotel? I forgot to eat breakfast. Sakura lied sheepishly. Minato smirked. Oh, so now you're asking me for permission. I've never held so much power in my life. Sakura narrowed her eyes and glared at Minato. I see how it is. I try to be nice and it backfires. From now on, I will not listen to a single call you make. Ignoring her statement, Minato continued, I found a ramen shop last night. I was going to stop by there if you want to join me. She wrinkled her nose at the thought of ramen. Definitely not. With that, Sakura began running towards their hotel. She knew she had left Minato in a daze. It took Sakura all of 10 seconds to reach the hotel. When she reached the entrance, she slowed her pace and leisurely walked up the stairs to her room. The second she entered, she began searching for her Senbon. She walked over to her backpack and opened it. Feeling around the bag, she found it in a little pocket that was invisible until close inspection. After retrieving the Senbon, she opened her pouch that kept all of her necessary medical herbs in case of emergencies and picked out the small vial of poison. She opened the vial and dipped both ends of the Senbon into the concoction so she would not have to pay mind to which specific end she would need to stick Minato with. After the task was completed, she slid the Senbon into her tape that surrounded her forearms for easy access, careful not to scratch herself, as such an action would kill her instead. When she was done, she walked over to the supplied mirror and truly looked at her reflection. What she saw shocked her. Sure, Sakura would gaze at her appearance in her bathroom mirror from time to time, but it would be nothing more than a quick glimpse. She never cared much for vanity. Only when her missions involved seduction did she ever tend to her looks. But she hadn't received one of those in years. She liked to tell herself it was because she was needed for more important missions, when her subconscious told her it was because the younger female ninja were much prettier and could accomplish the task easier. But now, when she focused on her appearance, she knew the latter was not true. Sakura wouldn't say she was drop-dead gorgeous, but she was definitely attractive. Maybe Minato was right. When I get back to the mist, I am definitely going to open myself up a bit more. I could use someone to keep me sane. She turned away from the mirror and gazed around her room. I thought I would be here a lot longer. But maybe after this mission the Mizukage will finally give me a well-deserved vacation. I could definitely use one. Sakura had one more preparation to make. She walked over to the bed and sat down. After making a short series of hand signs, she whispered, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." 5 minutes later, Sakura was staring at Sakura. You know what to do. Avoid the ramen shop. Sakura nodded and walked over to the window. After opening it, she slipped through it and down to the street. Sakura stayed sitting on her bed for a minute longer before exiting through the hotel room door and, soon after, the hotel's entrance. She decided to explore the frost for a little bit. Sakura was going to need some time to be noticed by shop owners, so she had time to spare. After an hour or so, when Sakura noticed shops opening for morning business and the streets were becoming busy, she decided it was probably time to find Minato. Sakura made a hand sign and whispered, barely audible to her own ears, "Release." Good. Sakura was spotted exiting the village. With a sense that her plan might follow through without any complications, Sakura set out to find the ramen shop. It only took her 5 minutes. To her surprise, Minato was still sitting in a barstool. He must have noticed her approaching because he turned around and waved, with ramen noodles protruding out of his mouth. That is repulsive. Hey Ayumi, you really should have joined me. This ramen is amazing. Hurry up and finish. We need to continue our mission. Seriousness spread over Minato's face as he quickly gulped down his mouthful. Right. Here's your money. He deposited the appropriate amount of money onto the counter and began walking away with her. I already asked the ramen shop owner whether he had seen Sakura. He hadn't. But he gave me a couple of shops names to check out. Sakura nodded. They asked every single shop owner that was suggested, but to no avail. None of the shop owners had seen anybody remotely close to their description. Oh come on, Sakura. Tell me somebody noticed you around here. As they exited the current shop they were in, Minato shouted, "Hey, Akane-sama." Sakura followed his eyes to an older ninja with gray hair. He looked up at Minato's address. Well, look who it is. How are you doing today, Minato? I wish we had time for conversation, but we're tied for time. Would you by chance have seen that ninja I was describing to you last night? Akane's face lit up. Actually, I have. I saw her strolling to the gates about 15 minutes ago. Immediately, Minato took off toward the gates shouting, "Thank you, Akane-sama." I'm Ayumi. Sakura smiled and slightly bowed before pursuing Minato. All right, Sakura. This has been one of your easiest missions yet. Let's finish it.